Okay, we are now recording. So this is Sean Mulholland, and I'm the city manager for the city of Lebanon. This is the Lebanon, the Leb Airport Tech Park Advisory Board meeting, the first meeting. It's being conducted within accordance with the provisions of RSA 91A, an emergency order number 12 issued by the governor of the state of New Hampshire. It's being conducted virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's not practical at this time for the board to meet in person due to the pandemic, and therefore it is being conducted virtually. The public is allowed to participate in this meeting, and they can do so by logging in through the Microsoft Teams link or calling in on the phone number that's provided to participate. If you are calling in by phone, if you wish to participate, you just need to dial *6. It'll allow you to speak on at any time you're allowed to do so. That's for the general public. Obviously, for board members, that's a different story. You can speak anytime you need to. We have a number of tasks that we have to accomplish tonight. So first, I will call the roll because we do have one person right now at least participating by phone. So we have present with us today. We'll start with, I'm just going to let Tracy in again. All right. So we'll call the roll of members of this. Jim Winnie, Councilor Jim Winnie.
Yes, present.
Member Jason Archambault. Jason, you don't show that you're being muted, but we cannot hear you at this time. All right, well, we'll just move on. We also have Kelly, Karen calling in. Kelly, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, present.
Okay, and we have Tracy Hutchins, who is also on the board from UVBA. Tracy?
I'm here. Hello.
Okay. And we have staff members, David Brooks.
Good evening.
And Carl Gross, Airport Director.
Good evening.
Okay, anybody else on the line that I, for some reason, can't see? Don't think so. Okay, so let's roll down the agenda. At some point here, we're going to pick a chairperson who's obviously not going to be me, and they can run the meeting from there. But in the interim, we'll start out, we did the introductions of each other without getting in a great deal on that. Discussion of board duties and responsibilities. And what I want to do is I want to share my screen as I pull this document up. Okay, can everybody see the screen? It should be a map of the airport park. Obviously, Kelly, I know you cannot.
Right, that's okay. I'm listening.
Okay. So we do have the map that outlines the area that the TIF of this particular TIF district. As you can see, to the right side of that is city-owned property. That's area 1 Bravo or 1B, that is commonly known as. And then the left side of that is the airport tech park that's owned in private hands. But that encompasses the entire TIF district as it is known right now. On the right-hand side, there is zero value right now, zero taxable value because that belongs to the city. On the left-hand side, there is taxable value for that presently vacant land. So we only have one way to go, and the right-hand side, and that's up because there's no value right now, and anything that gets added to that, when that goes into private hands, will increase the value, and that's new tax increments. So anything that happens in there is going to produce tax revenue that's going to go into our TIF. On the left side, that vacant property has a value. So anything that increases the value of that property, that tax revenue generated from that increment will come into the TIF fund. So make sure everybody understands that piece.
Okay.
Any questions about the map that we have in front of us? Because I'm going to move on. All right. So I'm not going to go through all of this with you. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at this already. The basic premise of this TIF district is to provide public facilities and infrastructure that will allow private development to occur on both of these properties. And as you can see, it says public facilities to be constructed. That's infrastructure including roadways, sidewalks, water, sewer, drainage infrastructure, placement of private utilities, distribution lines underground, expansion or replacement of public utility infrastructure to allow that private development to occur.
Sean?
Yeah.
I got a note from Jason that he was having a problem with his microphone. He's trying to, I take it he's trying to dial into the call by phone to listen,
Yeah,
but he can see everything that's going on, even though he can't be heard.
all right.
Conference ID again, and
All right,
then
so,
press pound.
Can you pull up on your screen, because I can't, David, can you see if he's trying to get in to let him in the meeting?
I can let him in if he gets in. It sounds like his audio might be working actually.
Yeah, it sounds like.
Recorded and transcribed.
Jason, will you mute your Teams now that you're on the phone? Looks like he might be in.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jason,
I think I got it. Sorry about the confusion. I don't know
Oh,
what's
that's
going on
perfect.
over here.
Good, got you. All right. So we'll just keep moving on through this. Again, I'm not going to go through all this in detail. That would take probably a couple of hours. But again, the main purpose of this is to use the TIF money to create public infrastructure that will allow for private development to occur on this particular site. And that private development will do two things. One, it'll produce that tax increment, which will be used to pay for the bonds for the public infrastructure. And our plan is to lease the properties, and that revenue would go to the airport fund. So that's the basic premise of this particular TIF development here. If anybody has questions, because there's only a few of us here, just jump right in at any time to ask those questions.
I'm good for now, but thank you.
All right. So powers and authorities, that's outlined in RSA 162K:63, talks about that. And then it's further defined by the actions by the city council. The council has defined the TIF district, as you saw there, and there are certain parameters. I won't get into those unless you want to ask questions about that, about how much the size of a TIF district can be, and its tax value, how much that can be. It's limited. The city is limited to how many TIF districts it can have, based upon what percentage of the assessed value of the city and how much land space they take up. And the city has two of them. We're well within those right now. Just so you're aware of that.
Okay.
So again, the objective is to use, again, the increment, the additional money that's created by development on these sites or increased value on these sites to pay for that public infrastructure that allows for private development to occur. It's basically a force multiplier to allow the development to grow and the city's economy to grow. And then once that economic development piece is done and that infrastructure is paid for, the TIF district is supposed to end. And further as we go on, that idea is 25 years. The concept is that whenever the bond is done, they're usually actually 20-year bonds. At the end of that, the TIF district should be eliminated because it will have met its function. And then all of the tax revenue will go into the city's general fund or the respective school and county. Right now, we are capturing the city's portion of the tax rate, the increment, as well as the county and the school. So the county and school would not get any increased value of these properties. It would all go to the TIF. So that's a little bit different than the normal tax structure.
Mm-hmm.
There's also discussion about sale of city-owned property. We're looking at leasing the spaces, not actually selling the spaces. That's the present plan anyway. But it leaves open that option if we chose to do that, or at least the council chose to do that. Remember, we're an advisory board. We advise the council on what action should be taken, but ultimately it's up to the council to take those actions.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the annual TIF district revenues, and here's some projections based upon what we think might come in over a period of time. That depends on how quickly the infrastructure can be built. And again, there's the annual allocation of captured value. So the assessor does that. What's on the ground on April 1st of each year. So that next year, assuming nothing changes, then there'll be no change in the increment. There'll be no increment. There'll be $0. But once buildings get placed on there, or there's an increase in value of the properties, especially the private property, not so much the city property, but the private property, we'll actually have some money coming into the TIF fund. And that'll be based upon the assessment that's done by the city's assessor on April 1st of each year for new increment. We are going through a reval this year. So at Airport Tech Park, the private property that's owned there, probably will increase in value. And that change in value will create some increment for this TIF district. Not sure how much that will be. We won't know that till September 1.
Mhm. Okay.
And of course, any public facilities that are created, the city will have to operate and maintain those. And as I told you before, the duration of the TIF district is anticipated to be 25 years or until expiration of the bonds that are needed for the infrastructure projects. 25 years is probably about right. Even if we do a 20-year bond, by the time we actually start that and float the bonds, it'll be about 25 years. Assuming everything goes as planned, that is.
Mhm.
And this just is the calculation for the TIF district limitations, and you can see those there. If I'm going too fast, somebody just say so, because I'm just going to briefly go over these items. The city manager is the designated TIF administrator, TIF district administrator, and of course you are the advisory council, and we are short a couple of members, which I think you're probably aware.
Mm-hmm.
It just outlines that, who's supposed to be on the board. So myself and Tracy Hutchins, who's the, it says Lebanon Area Chamber of Commerce, that is now the Upper Valley Business Alliance. It has transformed into that, which covers the towns of Hanover and the city of Lebanon. So we are both non-voting members, Tracy and I, on the TIF advisory board. We can obviously comment and participate in the discussions, but we don't have the authority to vote. There's only 3 voting members at the present time. And that's Councilor Winnie, Kelly, and Jason.
Okay.
And again, your job is to advise the city council on policies and actions for the TIF district in terms of planning and construction and implementation of the development program. And we meet as we need to. We don't have to have a set schedule, but that's at the call of whoever the chair will be, and we'll be picking a chairperson here shortly, or the city council or myself. And the council can make amendments to the TIF district as it goes along if it chooses to do so. Again, we talked about the duration of the program is 25 years. Or the conclusion of the bond repayment plan. And it talks about how you compute the tax increments. And again, I told you, we get the full tax value. We get the school's portion and the county's portion of that tax increment. Not just the city's portion of it. Again, it's more calculations about the land area because there are rules on TIF districts. And then here's the resolution that approved the district by the council. That brings us here today. I know I went through that quickly. Are there any particular questions about that? But that's our charge. That's our scope as it's outlined initially by statute and then by further being refined by the council by its resolution. Any general questions?
Sean?
I took notes, Sean. Is it possible that after the meeting you'd be able to email that? Is it a PDF or something you could send to me
Yes.
just so I could go through it?
Yeah, in fact, let me just do it as we're speaking.
Oh, wonderful.
That way, if you're going to pull it up while we're talking about it, you can do that.
Great.
Sean, has the city established that bond yet?
Say it again. You broke up a little bit.
Yeah, I think I'm double signed in. Has the city established the bond yet to put
No.
the infrastructure in?
No, and we're going to talk about that before the night's out, the CIP project that we're presently working on right now, and some of the timelines and how that might work. We will get to that. All right.
Sean, Jim, with what I think is a quick question, the estimates that you showed earlier in the presentation, the sort of first slide there with numbers, I don't have it right in front of me, but are those were those numbers done pre-pandemic, and do we anticipate any changes to those based on the pandemic? Using your crystal ball?
Yeah, I don't see the pandemic being the issue, because the assessment that the city's assessor is doing is based on the last 2 years of sales. So that, I don't expect that to be an issue. And you have to remember too, that the city's portion of it has zero value
Sure.
in terms of how we assess things. So it's going to be that Upper Valley Tech Park piece that would increase in value. And of course, it's vacant land right now. It should appreciate in value, but it doesn't have any structures on it. So it won't be particularly significant in terms of the tax value at the end of the day. At least I don't suspect it will be. We got some initial estimates that residential across the city properties would go up by 10 to maybe 20%, and commercial could go up as much as 50%, but that remains to be seen. But again, it's based on the previous 2 years of sales, not what's occurred in the last 3 or 4 months.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just go back down again to where you were looking at, Councilor Winnie, and
That's the one.
yeah. Obviously, we're dealing with a 2018 tax rate. We have a 2019 tax rate we dealt with, and we will be setting the 2020 tax rate in October, approximately. So we'll have some better idea where we're at. Again, September 1, we'll know what that increase in value is. That'll be part of that second half tax bill. And we already have increased in value in the first half tax bill for the downtown TIF district, but that's a little bit different than what we're dealing with here. So there'll be something, but it won't be a whole lot of money to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, can I just expand on this
Please.
graphic that you're showing right now? That very first line, the annual new development square feet of 8,000 feet, that is, having looked at the Airport 1A business park, the average building size in that area is around 25,000 square feet. So this 8,000 square foot number assumes one building every 3 years on average. That's where the 8,000 comes from. I think it's reasonable with interest rates at virtually zero. The annual financing constant could change, and obviously the tax rate has already changed and may change again. But I just wanted to clarify that the assumption that was made was approximately one building every 3 years. Not that we would have a bunch of 8,000 square foot buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Further questions about what our scope is, what our duties are? I mean, that's obviously a very important piece. What we're supposed to do as a board, what our job is, what our function is. Before I move on, we can always come back to it if there are further questions, and I'm sure there will be. Anything I can answer initially?
I'm all set for now. You're doing a great job. And I did get your email, so I'm downloading that now. So I'm all set for now.
I sent it to Tracy and to Jason as well, just to
Okay,
make sure.
thank you for that.
All right. Well, again, if there are further questions, and again, I suspect there will be as we go along through this, don't hesitate to ask. So the next thing is election of officers. We do need to have a chair and a vice chair to officiate the meetings. The money is really good and the benefits are great. I'll just tell you right now for those job functions.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know when you might get paid, but So the only people that are eligible to be elected to those positions would be the three of you, Councilor Winnie, Jason, and Kelly. And like I said, we need a nomination or nominations for chairperson. And then after that, the vice chairperson.
Well, could I make a nomination of Jim Winnie as chairperson?
Okay.
I would second that nomination.
All right, I got to write this down. So we have Kelly nominates Councilor Winnie and Jason seconds. We don't normally ask them if they're interested in the position because they would probably say no, so we don't give them that opportunity. So are there any other nominations for the esteemed position of chairperson of the TIF Advisory Board? Okay, there being none. So we have to do roll call votes here because we are operating virtually. So I'll start out with Kelly Collins. So Kelly Karen. So what you would do is you would say aye or nay. So in this particular case, we have the nomination for Councilor Winnie as the chairperson. So Kelly, what say you?
Aye.
Okay, Jason?
Oh, did we lose him?
At a pivotal time.
His
Right,
audio is
exactly.
gone.
Well, Jim, seeing we need a tiebreaker because we only have one vote, we need you to decide which way you want to go on this matter.
Well, if it's the will of the TIF District Advisory Board, I will vote aye.
Okay,
And I will vote aye. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh,
I can now.
Jason.
Okay, thank you. I don't know what's going on over here.
that makes it unanimous, and we have a new chairperson. So, Mr. Chairperson, I will turn it over to you to accept nominations for the esteemed position of Vice Chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. City Manager, sir. I will open the floor to nominations for the position of Vice Chair.
I would nominate Tracy for that. Or I mean, Kelly. Sorry about that.
Okay, Jason nominates Kelly.
And I would second that nomination.
Okay, and Councilor Winnie seconds. All right, any other nominations, right? That's what you would say next, Councilor Winnie.
That is what I was about to say, yes. All right, hearing none then, we'll do our roll call vote. Jason.
Jason votes aye.
All right, thank you. And Kelly?
I will vote aye,
All
and
right,
thank you.
Councilor Winnie also votes aye.
Okay, we have a new Vice Chair.
All
All right, well, thank you.
Welcome.
We'll send you W-4s later on, but if you don't get them, don't worry about it. They'll eventually catch up to you.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, next item on the agenda is item C, set meeting schedule.
So
Mr. Mulholland, do we have a set schedule for the other TIF districts? How frequently are they meeting, just as a framework?
Well, I do have one scheduled for downtown, but one of the things you're going to need to do is we have to put together a budget which is due by July 24th. Now, for us, that's going to be pretty easy because we really don't have anything. But we do need to set a budget, and we also need to, item number D, we need to come back with you with a plan for the airport tech park, and you really should make a recommendation one way or the other on that before that actually goes before the council in the fall. And David's still working on that, but we can chat about that in a minute. So those two things need to occur. I don't think you need to set meeting schedule. Of course, that is up to you to do that. But those are the two tasks that you have in front of you, I think, for right now.
Sure. Is the other TIF district meeting about once a month, or if anyone has any thoughts on if we need to set something regular and recurring up, or if a sort of ad hoc basis is okay? I mean,
They did ad hoc, and what they did is they met with the Arts Council that obviously applies to the downtown area. They had their initial meeting, met with the Arts Council, and they have future plans to meet with the EDC, and they also worked on the 20 Spencer Street project. So they had a number of other things that they were doing.
Sure. Any thoughts, Kelly or Jason? Or Tracy, for that matter?
I feel like ad hoc might work for this one. I'm not sure how quickly things are moving or how often things are changing.
I would agree. I think as we initially get set up, I would think that would be appropriate.
Sure, that's my thought too. We probably want to set something for the budget portion that's due by the 24th of July.
Yep.
Even though that's fairly quick. Sean, I assume that's not something we can do now. We'd need to kind of figure out exactly what we're doing and then do the budget for it afterwards.
You can, but my suggestion would be that I just have Beth, my administrative assistant, coordinate with you folks to schedule a meeting when we have the information from you. I would like to get the airport tech park. We're waiting, and David can jump in on this when we talk about D, when that's ready, and you can do both at the same time. I think that probably would make most sense.
That sounds good to me.
I agree.
Yep, I would agree as well.
All right. Anything else on the meeting schedule?
Not from me.
All right. Then let's move on to item D, development project of the Lebanon Airport Tech Park.
And David, I'll let you speak on that.
Sure. So following the creation of the TIF district and the formation of the advisory board, the city council appropriated funds last year for this year's 2020 budget to design and get permitting started on the tech park infrastructure improvements. We've hired the Dufresne Group to assist us with that infrastructure design. They've been working on it for a couple of months, working jointly with Carl at the airport as well as Sean. We've had a couple of sort of a kickoff meeting and then a 30% design review meeting based on what the consultant has developed so far. It envisions I believe, up to five building sites, along with some stormwater retention area and a road that runs more or less along the line between the Airport 1B property owned by the city, as well as the Upper Valley Tech Park property. It would be essentially an extension of Air Park Road into this area. What we've done so far, what I have proposed for the upcoming capital budget, is to basically break the project into two phases. That would allow us to get the initial infrastructure constructed. That would be roadway, water, sewer, drainage, as well as three-phase power extended into the site. It would build the drainage detention basin that would be sized to accommodate all of the anticipated build out, as well as providing access to the first two building sites. And what that would do is allow us to make the minimum infrastructure investment necessary to get the TIF working, get the project moving, get some development occurring, and not until there's some development occurring within either property that's beginning to spin off the tax increment that we need to pay off the bond, would we then proceed with the phase two portion, which would extend the roadway by another 850 feet or so and provide access to the last three building sites on the 1B property. The roadway alignment, as I said, is designed to allow the eastern portion of the tech park property to be developed and accessed from that roadway. The western 2/3 of the tech park property already has access off of Technology Drive. So presumably they could, if they had a project and they wanted to build it on that westerly portion off of Technology Drive, they could begin to develop their property and generate tax increment, whether or not the city moves forward with this investment or not on the 1B property. But as Sean mentioned earlier, it is only through development of the 1B property that the lease value, lease revenue would ultimately be directed to the city's airport operations budget. So that's the plan so far. Again, they are beyond the 30% design mark. And they are continuing to get information about the potential cost of extending three-phase power. Even though three-phase power is in the vicinity of Airport Road and Air Park Road, it is extraordinarily expensive to extend that into this new development. So the estimate that we have for infrastructure, the roadway, water, sewer, drainage, is on the order of about 1.4 million, 1.5 million.
Mhm.
And the three-phase power just to the first half is roughly $750,000. So
Oh, okay.
the total project that's being proposed for capital funding in 21 is roughly 2.3, almost $2.4 million.
Mhm.
And that includes, again, because they're only at the 30% design, that includes quite a bit of contingency based on what they don't know yet. As they get more information, and they've recently done some soil borings, which will help them know more about the drainage design. That number, that pencil should get sharper and sharper, and the number should get more and more refined. So hopefully it will come down. They expect to be able to give us roughly 90% design drawings and a pretty good estimate of probable cost by the end of the summer.
Okay.
David, this is zoned commercial industrial, right?
It is zoned light industrial.
Light industrial, okay. And so any traffic that comes down on that road, would it allow for like a distribution center or larger vehicles or trucking, anything of that sort, or is that prohibited?
No, that would all be allowed in the light industrial zone. Warehousing, light industry, which is basic manufacture and production. All of those things are allowed. Office at a certain scale is allowed in the light industrial zone as well. So the roadway would be designed to accommodate larger trucks for delivery into those, what we would envision as, manufacturing.
Mhm.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I don't know if Sean can post the original picture of the airport TIF district. But again, the improvements that we are proposing only cover approximately the northerly 2/3 of the airport 1B property. Once you get south of that, there's sort of a break. You can see a break in the vegetation about 2/3 of the way down. At that point, there's some of the land south of that is conserved already through some private conservation easements, and then the area to the southeast gets very much steeper and more impacted by the airport runway and approach inclined planes and things. So it's not generally developable. So it's really in that northern, say, 15 to 1,800 feet coming off of the end of Air Park Road. And it's all outside the airport fence, obviously.
So David, when do we expect that we could have a meeting and present plans to this advisory board to look at and talk about some of the details? When do we expect that the next set of design plans to come back to us?
My recollection from our last meeting was that it would be coming by, they're aware of our July target for capital budgeting needs. So I will check into them. I don't have a specific date at the moment, but I'll see what they expect to have by early July, and maybe we can plan a meeting for mid-July.
Okay. All right.
I'm just making a note.
So just one thing with this, this is a very different TIF district than we have in the downtown area. The downtown area is already built, so it's redevelopment of a certain area. Whereas here, we're actually creating a whole new development that doesn't exist before. And there's a certain amount of risk with that. There are other communities that have developed industrial parks, creating TIF districts. There's a community in Maine in particular that did this. They created this very, very large industrial park, and very little of it actually got developed, and the taxpayers were on the hook for the cost of that development. So that's why we're presenting a very conservative approach. We're only developing the first couple of lots to get the project going instead of developing the whole project at one time. Because that's a bit more risky if the city were to invest all of that and then we're not successful in leasing out the pieces of land. That's a far bigger risk. So we're trying to minimize that risk here.
Yeah, sure.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And that's what was presented to the council initially when we discussed this. So everyone on the council agreed that that was the way to go.
Yep. Agreed.
So there's another piece that you need to know about, and we'll talk more about this when we actually talk about the budget, is I present the city's budget each year, and I am basically curtailing capital projects to no more than that, the debt service that's actually being retired by the city. That's a little bit different than it's a lot different than the past. So what that means for the city, we had a $29 million CIP in 2019, which got whittled down to 21 million, and the 2020 CIP is 11 million, and now we're talking about a CIP of 20.7 million over a 6-year period. That's a significantly smaller CIP project, some projects, and that's in order to level off the debt service because the city is getting close to its debt limits. And I'm very concerned about the ability to pay that debt service. Now we're talking specifically about the general fund. And my plan is to not actually charge this debt to the general fund, but to charge it to the airport fund. And that'll be news to Carl. But right now the city is subsidized, the general fund is subsidizing the airport. We're trying to get away from that. And that's why the purpose of 1B is to produce those lease payments to make the airport closer to being whole and less in the red that it presently is in. So that is the goal. So this would not actually fall within that $20.7 million over a 6-year period. That's the plan that I'm presenting to the council. It's up to the council ultimately what it chooses to do. But I just want to make you aware of that in the bigger scheme of things.
Okay.
Other questions about the development project that we have planned?
Not at this point. I don't have any other questions.
Okay.
All right. Any other business then?
We just have Tracy. Tracy and I have been working with GRDC about some other opportunities in terms of enhancing economic development in the city and bringing in particularly firms from the outside that may be looking to escape some of the urban areas where COVID-19 is particularly difficult and some of the present unrest that we have also. So we're going to be working on that, and which is part of the marketing plan for the city. And Tracy, you want to talk a little bit about that? I know we just started these discussions, but I'll let you talk a little bit about that if you will.
Yeah, GRDC is approached us about possibly applying for some of the nonprofit relief funds that the state received through the CARES Act, and projects that we might be able to fund with them as our fiscal agent, because both municipalities and 50C6 organizations, which is what our chamber is, would be prohibited from applying without having some sort of fiscal agent, and that role would be taken by GRDC. So I'm working on a proposal right now that I will submit to GRDC, who will include it in a grant application for the nonprofit relief fund that would develop a marketing website for the region, which would include Lebanon. We would do some targeted marketing in more urban areas for both relocation or recruitment of businesses and also of workforce. And what we're seeing on the ground is there's an increased interest for both the state level, the Business and Economic Affairs, and Duncan Cooley at GRDC has been getting inquiries as well, and so has some of our commercial real estate agents in the area, people who have ties to the Upper Valley. And in some cases, it may be someone who was originally from here but is now living in more urban areas, or they might have a connection to Dartmouth, or they have a summer home here. And you know, because of the pandemic and the unrest that's happening in more urban areas, they've decided that they would like to relocate here and either have a second location for their business or office space. And so we would like to capitalize on that movement and do some targeted marketing to that end. Part of this would also, the grant application would also include a part-time staff person to help manage this. A person would act as an economic development coordinator who could follow up on leads that would be generated by inquiries, help maintain a database of available commercial properties in the area, and just, you know, sort of generally help interact with, you know, alumni networks and organizations that would be looking to develop workforce. We still have companies in the areas, even though, you know, we had a great many layoffs and the unemployment rate is high, there are still companies that are looking to hire local. They still have talent needs. So we, you know, we certainly want to help them fulfill that. We'll submit the grant application next week, and then we'll have to see what happens from there. There's only $60 million that's been dedicated for this fund, and there's a great deal of competition. So even if this isn't funded through that effort, you know, the process of doing the grant and sort of doing a budget and kind of thinking out the pieces of it, we'll have it ready. So if we can find other funding opportunities, we'll jump on it.
So the key thing to this, if we're going to develop this here, we also have to market it. It's a two-part plan. And you folks work in business, you understand that anyway, more than we do, which is good. Well, it's a good thing we've got you on board. So that's a key part of that, and this is one way to get that done, to help market ourselves what we do have available for land. And that also obviously applies to the existing property in 1A that, Kelly, that you're part of, is bringing people to fill those spaces. We have some, I know we have at least one vacant building in 1A. This can help to keep those filled and keep those jobs here. So that's what we've got planned. Those are the things we're working on to get us where we think we need to be. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any additional other business?
No, I think it would be a good idea for us to set a date likely for early July so that we could go over the plans from David and get our budget set up.
So if you think you're in a position to do that, if you have your calendars out, we could certainly take a peek at that right now.
I am theoretically traveling in July, in early-ish July. I believe I leave on the 7th and come back on the 15th or 16th.
I can work around. The only days that are really tough for me are really Thursdays with school board stuff. But certainly I could we could do Friday the 17th if you wanted. I could do during the day. I'm not sure what other people's schedules are.
I can be pretty flexible with most of these things. I don't have anything planned right now in July, so.
How does that work for you, Jim, in terms of the daytime?
Days are tough for me. I have a full-time day job, which I can occasionally squeak out of, but let me just check on something.
You said you were leaving the 7th?
I think that's right. I'm just checking with my weekend coordinator. She's in charge of my calendar, so
Among other
I mean,
things, right?
I could
among
do
other things, yes.
I could do Thursday the 2nd if you wanted to do an after hours. That would be fine by me.
I just don't think we'll have the information for you by the 2nd.
That would be short. That's true.
Yeah. Well, I'm not seeing an immediate response, so maybe we should have Beth continue to coordinate with us with an eye towards something. I mean, potentially Monday the 6th would work, but that's not a whole lot more time than the 2nd. So.
Yeah, we need the 13th of July onward, something beyond
Okay.
that to make it
Yeah.
work.
Okay.
All right. So that's fine. I'll
We
send a
can
message.
email and settle on a date. Yeah.
Okay, I'll have Beth do that once we can solidify where we think we're going to have the data for you that you can take a look at.
Okay.
So we'll get that scheduled.
And
All
then
right. That works.
one other thing I guess to think about is we do have those 2 vacant positions. One is for a property owner / occupant, and
Mhm.
one is for a citizen rep. So if anyone knows anyone who fits the bill and we could twist their arm a little to jump on and get us up to full strength, that's certainly worth doing.
But both of those have to be Lebanon residents because the majority of the board has to be Lebanon residents, and you're the only other one, Jim. So those other 2
Correct.
have to be.
Yep.
So that's a bit more
Right.
tricky.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll definitely
So-
keep it in mind. See who I can
Great.
drum up.
Tell people the money's good, and the benefits are great, and it's definitely a fun time.
They get to spend an hour with us.
Really
you know?
sell it is what you're saying.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tell
I mean,
them they
I'd buy
make
you a pizza, but we can't do that. You're too far away. It'd be cold by the time you got it.
it's 5 times the salary I get for city council. So
Right.
all right. Any other business?
Just one more thing, Jim, is you do have to have rules, and my suggestion is you simply follow the modified rules, Robert's Rules of Order that we normally use for our meetings.
Yes, I suppose that's true. Is that something we need to vote on as a?
You actually do, and I didn't
Okay.
put it in here yet, but we can do that at the next meeting. I'll put that as the next item because you do have to have a set of rules.
Sure. Kelly and
Okay.
Jason, are you familiar with the Roberts rules?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I don't practice them as much as I should, so when I screw up, just correct me. But I got it. I got a general
Likewise.
understanding.
There's a whole book. So, let's plan on adopting that motion next time we meet, unless there are any objections.
Sounds like
Oh,
a
that
plan.
sounds good.
All
Does
right.
anybody need anything else that they don't have from me in terms of information that I can provide to you?
Sean, this is David. Would there be value in sending out the 30% plans or just hold off until we've got something more complete?
Yeah, my concern is because when we talked about this, there are a number of changes that have to be made. I think we need to get them something a little bit better that's refined. And
Okay.
That's why I want to do that initially because we changed a lot of that. So I think we need to get a better set of plans for them.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
If there's no other business, I would be open to a motion to adjourn.
I will submit a motion to adjourn.
And I would second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Archambault. All right. Roll call vote. Kelly,
Here.
are you voting aye or nay?
Aye.
All right.
Mhm.
And Jason.
I am also here, but I'm going to vote aye.
All right. And I, Councillor Winnie, will also vote aye. So we are adjourned. Thank you for your time, and we will see you at some point in July, if not before.
Wonderful.
Very good.
I look forward to
Thank
it.
you very
Thank you,
much,
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks. Mr. Brooks, I'll see you in about 10 minutes.